What's the dumbest thing you actually believed? As a kid, my sister told me that we had an older brother that died. She said he died when playing bowling and his fingers didn't come out the ball and slid all the way down the alley. Then he turned into a skittle. I used to think that people exclusively wore hats if they were bald, because that's why my dad wore a hat. My dad is bald, but has always had a beard since I've known him. Anyway, he was also a serviceman. He used to tell me that the reason he was bald was that he stood on a landmine, which blew the hair off the top of his head, and it slipped round to give him the beard instead. As a child I was just like, yep, makes sense. Hair not on head, where in chin. That's gravity for ya. He also told me that the scar on his leg was from a gunshot wound. 20 years later I got a bug bite on my leg that got infected. Sorry, hope you're not eating. And left a perfectly round scar in the same place as his. I commented on how much my bug bite scar looked like his gunshot wound scar and he said, "What? Is that what I told you?" No, this was a bug bite that got infected. Ah, dads. That reindeer wasn't an actual animal, but specifically a mythical animal that Santa Claus used. I believed this until I was 23 or so, when I saw some nature documentary talking about reindeer. I was like, what? More so naive and innocent, rather than dumb but still funny. My dad used to tell us kids that a dwarf little person worked in and operated every car park barrier in the world. Every time he drove up to one, he'd press the button for the ticket and say, "Cheers mate, how's the wife?" and fake a conversation as he waited for the barrier to open. Lol. When I was a kid, I used to think professional wrestling was real, and The Undertaker scared the living shit out of me during his whole Ministry of Darkness phase. I thought he actually was Satan's minister or something. Like, yeah, he's an undead overlord of hell, here to bring an eternity of darkness and misery to this planet. But he also has to make a weekly television appearance to win a wrestling competition. And you can buy his action figure at Toys R Us. Even a large number of adults at one point believed pro wrestling was real. Some probably still do. 10 years ago, I had a 25-year-old cousin from India come to America for the first time. I was watching wrestling on TV and he had just had some friends attend a WWE event in India. He looked at me sheepishly because I was a much older cousin, and I guess he didn't want to offend me, and said that there are rumors that wrestling is fake. I laughingly explained to him that, of course we all know it's fake and we watch it anyway. He then got real confused. Then later, I took him boating on Lake Travis, where he saw white and Hispanic college girls in bikinis for the first time. Don't think that effer was ever going to go back to India after that. Nothing to do with wrestling, just the nostalgia came back to me as I was typing. That the Great Wall of China had a cat adoption program. I was meeting my friend's boyfriend for the first time, and he mentioned that he had just adopted one of the retired Great Wall of China cats. China trains these cats to patrol the wall and kill vermin, and at the end of their 7-year stint, they are retired and adopted out to a forever home. I kept asking questions about it. How do you apply? Are they a specific breed? How do they get transported worldwide? In the end, he told me that he made the whole thing up because my friend had told him I was really gullible and wanted to see how far he could push it, but he didn't think I'd get so enthused. The worst part? I was in my mid-20s at the time. Edit. Thanks for the awards, lovelies. Also, just thought I'd address some of the comments and clarify that my friend is actually a really sweet person. She's stood up for me many times when people have been cruel or insulting. It was an innocent prank, and I'm okay with taking the piss out of myself. When I was a little kid, I believed that when people got divorced, they had a divorce ceremony, like where they had to go to church and say, "I don't." And I imagined the woman wore a black divorce dress, like her wedding dress had been dyed black, and that everybody went to the reception, where the ex-bride and ex-groom sat on opposite sides of the hall, and there was a divorce cake, where the little bride and groom on top had their backs to each other with their arms angrily crossed. I eventually learned from watching my mom's soap operas that this was not the case, and was kind of disappointed, cause I'd been to a few weddings by then, and was interested in what a divorce ceremony was like. My dog went to a farm. Until I was 35, I had 2 turtles for over 10 years, until I went off to college. My mom told me she found a turtle lady that takes in unwanted turtles, and that they live in a nice big pond area in her backyard. Believed her, because my mom isn't the type to lie. A few years later I started to question it though because of the pet sent to a farm stories as I'd heard other people tell. I confronted my mom about it, and she maintained that she told the truth. I did some digging and found out that there actually was a turtle lady in our city. I went for a visit and sure enough, my turtles were there, along with a ton of others. So I guess sometimes these stories have a happy ending. I believed my uncle's roommate just slept on the couch. We lived with our uncles for a while. When my mother worked on the pipeline, I thought they were so selfless by sharing a bed, so us kids could have the other bedroom. I would be a teen before I learned that one of my uncles wasn't my uncle. He was just my uncle's lover. Turns out your uncle also worked on the pipeline. I grew up in a very liberal hippie town and my uncle also shared a bed with a guy, except they just told me it was his life partner boyfriend, because they didn't see a reason to censor. When I was 8, some kid at school was talking about their uncle who has a roommate that shares his bed and I told him, "Your uncle is gay. That's probably his boyfriend," and he refused to talk to me for the rest of the year. Then 5 years later he told me I had been right. He just realized his uncle was gay. When I was little, I genuinely believed the Teletubbies were evil, and that if I didn't watch them on TV every night, even though I hated the show, that they would come and get me. To be fair though, they're kind of creepy. As a kid, I thought that the world wars were like battle royales, where there were no alliances, no surrenders, and just pure bloody violence between every country on Earth. For example, I thought every country fought all of its neighbors simultaneously. I also thought there was a World War III, and always wondered why my mom didn't buy the box set of documentaries for it, like she did for the first 2. There was an ad for it on the TV, probably World War II thinking back. I thought guys got periods too, but only once, and you bled, and then you were able to impregnate someone. I cut my upper leg during a rugby match, and was bleeding near my groin and was devastated, because I thought everyone would presume I had my period mid-match, and also subsequently would be walking around, able to impregnate people. Worst thing is, I wasn't even a stupid kid. We literally just lived in a reserve country and I was a full-time boarder at my school, so never got the talk. Anyway, thanks for attending my bled talk. I thought sugar grew in sugar caves, similar to salt caves. I believed that sugar crystals, like rock candy, just grew in caves and there were parts of the world with beautiful crystallized sugar caves. I was 25 years old when I brought it up in conversation with my fiance. I tried to prove to him they were real, and it was when I reached my 4th page on Google, I realized my whole world was a lie. Edit. Oh wow, thank you for all the comments and awards. Really appreciated. Just some more background. When I was growing up, my parents always have these crystal sugar sticks to use in their tea, and I guess as a kid, I just believed this was sugar in its raw form, especially as it looked like the rock crystals. I've never thought about it or questioned it, as the topic of sugar origins never got brought up. Imagine someone telling you that something you always believed wasn't right, like wool came from trees not sheep. Wouldn't you be on the 4th page of Google too? Many people have been asking why I didn't learn about this at school, as sugar canes as there were sugar plantations during American slavery. I grew up in the UK, and unfortunately were not taught about American history, or the slave trade in history. I know loads about the Tudors though. I will do more research and educate myself on this, as I knew about cotton plantations, but not sugarcane plantations. And yes, coming from the UK, I knew about treacle mines, and the ironic thing is that I couldn't understand how anyone could believe them. That I could smell something while underwater. When I was around 10-12 years old, I was in a tropical themed water park where also happened to be a herbal bath. It smelled very nice, which I had not expected. Most of the tropical plants were fake plastic plants, so I figured the water in the bath was normal swimming pool water and the smell was coming from something else. The bath was surrounded with a small aromatic herb garden, which didn't look fake. I sneakily took a sample from a thyme plant. That felt surprisingly real. But because the air was filled with all the different aromas and a hint of chlorine, I couldn't smell anything different. When I tried to smell the thyme, I figured the only place where my sense of smell couldn't be fooled by any fakery was underwater. For 5 seconds I actually felt pretty smart. Until I tried. Edit. Wow. Thanks for the awards and upvotes. This makes my day. I wish I could answer the question about the smell underwater, but I found out it doesn't work like that. As soon as the water entered my nose, I noticed the flaw in my plan and the irony of it all. My head came up immediately, all while laughing, because I felt so smart with my waterproof plan a second ago, and coughing, which only made it worse, and resulted in another gulp of water, going in the opposite direction. No physical damage indeed. Some people described how this works in the comments, and as others said, it hurts a bit, but not too long. Glad to see some of you also tried to experiment with their airways underwater, even though our results probably never will lead to a scientific breakthrough. Let us never be dumber than that again. When I was 6, I watched a movie, King Kong, and a scene with a bunch of black folks emerging from the mud appeared, and I got a bit spooked by it. A bit later, I was at McDonald's with my parents, and I saw a black family walk in. Thank God my parents are deaf, or I would have asked, out loud, why are the mud people here? Mum thought I was racist, but I was just a bit inexperienced. Lol. I took swimming lessons at the local pool, like all the kids basically. One day in the changing room, there were a few black boys changing. They didn't have white butts like a late summer tanned white kid that I was. I came out of the dressing room and met my mom with, "Mom, did you know they were black all over?" I got, and later she asked, what did I expect? The dark meat and white meat come from 2 different birds. I was 12 when they asked me, as they did each year at Thanksgiving, which kind of meat I wanted. That year, I said, dark meat, please. But I feel bad. I'm the only one who really eats it, and you always have to get an entire second turkey, just for me. I'm still teased about it to this day, at 46 years old. That reminds me of 4-year-old me, that hated celery, but after my mum told me that these green things on my plate were actually Italian well crabs, I ate it like candy. My sister still makes fun of me, 17 years later. That sperm were the size of tennis balls and would burst forth from the head of your penis. If you slept with a woman, slither across the bed up into her, and make the baby. Thanks. Facts of Life pop-up book with no adults, willing to clarify that the objects within were not always to scale. When we played Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, my little sister used to accept the lamest missions and not get good rewards. I told her about it and she responded with, how would you like it if you were a poor Pokemon that lost its mom and was stuck all alone and had nothing to give someone to save you? I laugh my head off at her because it's not real. Duh. But secretly, I feel that in my soul sometimes. I believed I could kill people with my hands when my fish died after I took it out of the water. This happened when I was 4, so I never hugged or touched anyone until at school I poked a person I hated and he didn't die. Edit 1. Yes, I tried to murder him because he told on the teacher when I peed on the banana plant tree. If you guys want me to tell that story, tell me where I should post it. Edit 2. I climbed on the table when I killed the fish. Also, I used to live in Brazil. That's why it's a banana tree. And no, I was not the janitor. We didn't have a janitor. You made a mess. You cleaned it. I was in preschool, not high school. I love the theories you guys are making though. The banana tree story. When I was 4 in preschool, we had a game called Girls Try and Kiss the Boys. I didn't want to get kissed, so I climbed up the 8-foot tall mango tree with a tree house. I decided to go on the roof and collect a bundle of bananas. There were banana trees next to it. When a girl tried climbing up, I took the peel off one of the bananas and threw it at her face. I missed, but it scared her off. I thought I was going to get in trouble, so I pulled up the rope ladder and hid. I was so scared of going down when I had to pee, I just poked my dong out the window and peed on the tree. A kid saw this and told the teacher. The teacher came, and I wouldn't go down. Then she said I would get candy, so I went down. There was no candy. They called my mom and I had to talk to the principal. I couldn't watch TV for a day. The worst part was, today was the day that they had Adventure Time on TV at the time I got home. After that day, I hated the kid that told on me. That someone could shoot me from the other side of a phone during a phone call. Whenever kid me was on a phone call, I always tried to end the call as soon as possible and get away from the phone as fast as possible. Edit. Holy shit. This is my highest post in all my time on Reddit. Thanks for the upvotes. Edit 2. Thank you for my first ever gold. I was once told that British TV presenter Jeremy Beadle's hand had such small fingers because of a condition, Poland syndrome. That meant he had to have his fingers replaced, and that his fingers were, in fact, pig's toes. For years, this was a piece of obscure general knowledge that I would break out when I felt the need to display the breadth of my weird knowledge. And it went down really well, until the day someone finally said, "Don't pigs have hooves?" I don't know that I have ever experienced such a moment of butt-clenchingly cringy embarrassment. Edit. I can't believe my confession of dumbassery got me a gold. I used to think they dropped the ball at Times Square multiple times for each USA time zone. I just assumed people stuck around for the extra ball drops, cause they were all drunk and having fun. Hilarious edit. Worth mentioning that I believed this until I was an adult and had my East Coast wife let me down easy. Another edit. Thanks for my very first award. Seems a fitting one for this post. I grew up in a Jewish household, but was aware of the whole Christmas thing. It was my understanding that Santa would go around bringing gifts to kids if they left out a plate of cookies and some milk for him. Seemed easy enough. 'Twas the night before Christmas and I left the perfect food arrangement out for Santa, thinking in spite of my religious beliefs, he might leave me a gift in exchange for the snacks. When I awoke the next morning, the cookies and milk were gone, but no present was left. I was furious. How dare this jolly fat man come into my hole, steal my food, and not leave anything in return. I spent years complaining about it, and would curse the man's name if I saw him. Of course, years later, my dad admitted that he had eaten everything. Thanks, Dad. When I was a kid, my mom told me that people actually had grey skin in the old days for real, and that no color, except black, white or grey, ever existed back then. I believed that for way too long. 17. When I first saw the colorized photo of Charlie Chaplin, I was shocked. Then Gaston told me that no, people were indeed the same back then as we are now, only the photos and videos were captured in black and white because of lack of technology. I also thought the world was black and white until color TV came out. I remember asking my mum what it was like when the world suddenly became colorful. She promptly informed me that it was just the TV that was black and white and not the world. Lol. I thought that girls peed from their butts. Then I learned about vaginas and thought girls peed from there. It wasn't until I was like 16 that I realized there was another hole. Lots of grown men still think women pee from the same hole they have sex with. It's sad. My ex-girlfriend thinks that men can get pregnant too. Damn you, Schwarzenegger. I was 6 and I saw a man with a big beer belly shopping for diapers at a mall. It made all sense to me and I was so happy. I screamed, "OMG, you will have a baby." I think I am gonna go rewatch Junior again. That being named Johnny was a sin. There's a part of the song, "The Devil Went Down to Georgia," that goes, "My name's Johnny and it might be a sin, but I'll take your bet." I instantly associated the name with being a sin, not making bets with the devil. This made me think kids named Johnny were sons of devil worshippers. I was a very dumb kid. If you turn off a video game without pausing, the hero is left paralyzed and defenseless. Yes, I actually believed that. Edit. Dang, this blew up. Lol. For some background, this was back in the early 90s, before I was ever aware of MMORPGs. We're talking, like, if I didn't pause the game and just turned the console off, Sonic was easy picking. For Eggman's robots, XD. I used to be so confused about the amount of time it would take to make movies because I was convinced they did it all in chronological order, and when they did flashbacks to childhood, I was like, wow, those actors are so committed. Or I would think it must take a long time for their hair to grow or change in any way, and never considered it could be a wig. Lol. Edit. Yes, I have heard of the movie Boyhood. It came out when I was 22, so well past my perception of movies being made that way, but it definitely reminded me of this when I first heard of it, and I thought it was really cool that someone actually did that. I used to think that they cast people into TV shows and movies by finding people with the characters' names on the street and having them act. Thought this for a good few years, until a Disney Channel actress appeared on a different show with a different character, and I found out her name was neither of the characters. That there was an incredibly fat, slimy dinosaur called a Blopiosaurus. I even made a whole report about it in kindergarten, based entirely off of the information my oh so intelligent and generous stepfather told me. Not me, but when I was 10ish, I got my then 7-year-old brother to believe that he was the reason the TV kept fritzing out. I literally told him that he was bad luck and that he had to go to another room while I tried to fix it. He genuinely believed it, and today he still gives me flack for it. So my dad used to say he was at gym until like 11 PM 3 times a week. My dad was pretty fit, so I naively believed him, as did my other 4 siblings. You can see where this is going, right? One day my boyfriend, now husband, was hanging out with me, and my dad came in late as usual and greeted us. After my dad went upstairs, my boyfriend asked me why my dad always gets home so late, and I told him he goes to the gym after work. He looked at me like I was an idiot, rightfully so, and said, he's at the gym from 5 PM 11 PM. Come on, you don't believe that, right? I told him I did. My husband shook his head, and that was that. Until a few years later when 2 of my sisters came to my apartment and told me that dad was cheating on mom with a coworker and had been even since we were little kids. I felt like a fool. There had been so many weird things about my dad that I brushed aside in my mind. I remember when I was really young I overheard my parents arguing and my mom talk about a divorce. I remember crying at the top of the stairs thinking about that, and then asking my mom and dad later why they were getting divorced. My dad got so mad at me, he yelled at me and accused me of lying. I was maybe 6 years old at the time, and I remember feeling so confused and hurt, and that maybe I was crazy and made it all up. Then there was the whole going to the gym thing 3 nights a week for 6 hours at a time. Also, my dad always liked to make himself look like the victim whenever my parents would argue, and they did so constantly. My mom didn't deal well with him cheating but didn't want to divorce him because she still loves him, and for the kids, she went from being a very loving and enthusiastic mom to abusing alcohol and pain pills and being angry all the time. My relationship with my mom wasn't the best for a long time. I loved her, but I didn't see her pain. I just saw her anger, her mean streak, her craziness. And my dad used that. Whenever they would fight, he would act so damn innocent and make my mom out to be the villain every time. I actually think that was what hurt me the most when I found out, knowing how much my mom had suffered alone and how my dad used against my mom in arguments, so we would always take his side. My mom was not innocent in this though. She was an adult. She made a choice to stay and endure, and that broke her. Both my mom and dad could have made the correct choice at any time, but they didn't, and everyone was made more miserable as a result. TLDR. Dad was at the gym for 6 hours after work 3 days a week, and my siblings and I believed this lie for 10 plus years before we discovered the truth. That people would be more intelligent, well informed, and more rational as internet access became more widespread. I hope maybe it's still gonna happen with the next generation, but the older I get, the more everyone seems either petty, childish, selfish, stupid, or a combination of all of the above. My father and I used to mess with my sister as she was growing up. When she saw an orange tree for the first time, the oranges were unripe and very green. We then told her that all of the citrus fruits came from the same tree, and depending on when you picked them, that was the fruit you got. They started as limes, then ripened into lemons, which would grow into oranges, and then if left too long, would grow into grapefruits. She graduated with honors from a major state university this year. We found out that she still believed this during our family trip to Mexico last spring, 2019, when we had to break the news to her. Funny story. I didn't actually believe this. My sister did. Me and my sister were 3 and 4. I was thirsty one day and wanted lemonade. My sister, who felt really bad because I got in trouble for trying to sneak a drink, wanted to give me lemonade. So, 5 minutes later, she gave me the lemonade and I drank all of it. After drinking all of it, I realized it wasn't lemonade. My sister thought that urinating in a sippy cup would make lemonade. Here's the list so far. I firmly believed from ages 3 to 8 that every single night, little elves would march around my bed until morning, and that if I dangled my foot off the bed, they would eat my toes. My mum told me that midnight was the witching hour, so if I didn't go to sleep by then, I would get kidnapped by witches. My mum also told me that if I didn't clean my room, snakes would raid my room because they were attracted to the mess. I also thought that a witch stood behind my bed each night, and if any bit of hair strayed from my pillow, she would take a piece for her spells. As you can imagine, I didn't sleep very well as a child. I was maybe 4 or 5. My dad was nailing up an old cat flap. I asked him why. Well, I didn't know the word drafts at that age, so for a couple of years, I was worried about herds of wild giraffes wandering round Britain, randomly sticking their heads in unsuspecting people's cat flaps. When I was a little kid, my grandfather had a small BW TV in the kitchen that he'd watch as he cooked meals. One day I asked him, if the rest of the world is in color, why did he keep that TV if it was broken? And he didn't know what I meant. I said, when the world changed to color, all the other TVs became color, but that one didn't. So why did he keep it? I believed, from old photos and old TV shows, that the whole world was once in black and white and one day it switched over to color, and all the old BW TVs, except for the one in my grandfather's kitchen, had switched over to color TVs too. My grandfather got a good chuckle out of it after I had explained my thinking.